Son of a bitch! Mother. So, get him away. Guys! Have you heard? Oh my god! Wikipedia said all Star Wars fans are actually Star Wars fans. Oh my god! Everyone get out of your coffee mess. Quickly now! Get out of here! So about a week ago I uploaded a video asking if the Acolyte actually breaks canon. From the last moral panic that the people that are usually upset were getting upset about. You know who you are. And though I did my initial search for any kind of source that would suggest any kind of break in canon, nothing seemed to turn up. So I did turn to my audience and anyone who happens across my video to provide me a source, bit of evidence to suggest that canon was actually being broken. I also did reference that I did trust sources like Wikipedia more than angry YouTubers. We're now a week later and the next episode of The Acolyte has come and gone in that time. 200 plus comments to that video and not a one made any kind of reference or placed any kind of source from any other canon bit of material just to say this book, this source, this line of dialogue, checkmate, and putting me in my place. That was until about yesterday when someone thought they had something on me where they suggested the video wasn't going to age very well because Ki-Adi-Mundi appeared in episode 4 of The Acolyte and was asking me, how do you justify that? To which I asked, justify what? What canon source are you referring to suggest that Ki-Adi-Mundi wouldn't be around during the time of The Acolyte? And credit where credit's due. They did reply with a couple of different sources, such as Topps cards and books from 2007, I believe. Haven't really heard back from them since I responded to them about their alleged sources that they put down. Gold star for them. But throughout my initial search to check to see if there was anything in relation to canon being broken for Ki-Adi-Mundi this time, again, nothing seems to come out other than non-canon sources. Because it would seem there aren't any actual official canon sources to suggest how old Ki-Adi-Mundi actually is. And even if the story takes place 100 years before the events of the prequel trilogy, what is canon in Star Wars is the fact that Force users can use the Force to extend their own lifespan if they are in tuned to the Force enough. Something like, I don't know, a Jedi Master perhaps? A reference to this would be the canon character, I believe they were called Master Fey, who was a human that was, as described, centuries old due to the power of the Force. But I am getting a little bit off track because the main reason that I am choosing to talk about this topic, because it seems also very quickly that people's immediate reaction to Ki-Adi-Mundi's presence in The Acolyte is being very quickly shown to just be another hollow, knee-jerk reaction from the typical people who have these kind of reactions. However, I did come across this article that I thought was very interesting, and it was very, in a lot of ways, unfortunate to read, but there's a lot of different emotions I have when I read this kind of article, so I would just like to share it with you all, and maybe we can glean some kind of revelation from all this. The Acolyte haters can't even let Star Wars Wiki Wikipedia update info in peace. The nonsense surrounding The Acolyte has reached new heights. Wikipedia, a great source for Star Wars fans, did an outrageous thing. They dared update a page with new information from the series. And now these so-called fans are sending threats to the website. Really cool time to love Star Wars. Star Wars prequel trilogy Jedi Ki-Adi-Mundi made a cameo in The Acolyte. And while many thought it was maybe another Jedi of Ki-Adi-Mundi's species, fans were shocked to learn it really was indeed the same character in the episode. While Ki-Adi-Mundi was part of Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, and the prequel films, it isn't outrageous to think he could be alive during The Acolyte, which is set 100 years before the prequels. Another Jedi we already knew was during the time of the series was Master Yoda, but Ki-Adi-Mundi showing up was a fun little nod to characters we know and love. And yet, any reason for angry fans to yell about something they will take. Technically, In canon, Ki-Adi-Mundi's age has never been specified, leaving no reason he can't appear in the series. There is a CD-ROM that came out in 1999 after The Phantom Menace that gave Ki-Adi-Mundi's age. But Star Wars creator George Lucas has, in the past, contradicted information on the very same CD-ROM. There was also a trading card that came out in 2013, but it was deemed non-canon by Disney's acquisition and handling of the Star Wars property. But it is important to remember that in canon, Ki-Adi-Mundi's age was never mentioned. So why is Wikipedia being attacked for rightfully changing the information with the new context we've been given in the Acolyte? These fans sent threats and yelled at the editors of Wikipedia for just updating the character's page. It has gotten so bad that the site had to release a statement. We aren't going to mince words on this one. If your response to an editor adding a date to an article on Wikipedia is to tell them you hope they and their pets die, you are not a Star Wars fan. Hate like that has no place here, and you are not welcome in our community. It continues on from there, but why belabor the point? And I will be addressing the whole not real Star Wars fans in just a moment, but I would like to take a moment to talk about my thoughts on fans attacking a website dedicated to literally the source material and keeping track of things, not just canon, but things that were non-canon in Star Wars, like Legends, EU. It's a place where anyone can go to look up information about these characters and the stories that they love. And while I find it personally appalling that, once again, the typical people we all know who would do something so pathetic because they didn't get their way, that they felt the need to send the editors of Wikipedia wishes of death upon them, is nothing short of embarrassing. In a lot of ways, however, when I see reactions from people like this, I can't fully help but have this small sense of satisfaction, because it just further proves the reality that these people have utterly and completely lost. Now, to be clear, if you don't like the shows genuinely, if you don't like what Disney's done genuinely since they've acquired it, don't think for a second that I'm laughing at your face or that I'm gloating over your distaste for this new era of Star Wars, provided you don't behave this way. Because I'm sure people will take that comment about, if you behave like this, if you send people messages that you hope that they die and their pets die because we updated a date on a character on Wikipedia, you're not a real Star Wars fan. I'm absolutely sure there's going to be someone out there bemoaning Wikipedia, drumming up this moral panic and pearl clutching and telling all the fans of their petty channel, oh, Wikipedia said all Star Wars fans are not real fans. Like they did with Star Wars and Lucasfilms when they were standing by Moses Ingram and simply said, hey, for the people sending our actor racist comments and treating her like shit just for being in a show that you don't like, could you not? And for those of you sending her racist comments, racism has no place in Star Wars. And then a lot of fans suspiciously pearl clutched and basically self-reported themselves at how personally offended and called out they felt because Lucasfilm said, hey, people who are being racist, stop being racist. If you aren't acting racist, what are you getting upset about? So if you read that article, if you read that post from Wikipedia saying, hey, if you're sending our editors messages hoping we die because we added a date, you're not acting like a real Star Wars fan, and you pearl clutch and you think, oh, well, what logically does that say about what your actions are? If you are not acting, if you are not sending these people those kind of messages, what would you have to be so personally called out by? Mind-blowing. I know. It's so crazy. It's so crazy. It's just wild. But at this point, you know, I think a lot of fans, we were expecting this. I mean, the second we saw that the trailer to The Acolyte was getting mass downvoted, we knew this was coming. And we know how to deal with it because we've been through this before, where we just sit back and we wait for these people to burn themselves out until they find the next big thing to cry about Star Wars being killed over, which is an interesting thing because not that long ago, I did post a video responding to this overwhelming number of videos coming across YouTube about how Star Wars is dead because Lucas sided with Disney yet again, despite the past few years pretending there was some beef between them. This life and death blood feud happening between the company and Lucas before he stepped up on multiple occasions to support Disney. But I mean, well, that's a completely different topic for another time. One that I've already talked about on several occasions, but this fandom seems to have a short memory, clearly. But it is important to remember and keep focus on the fact that if these people were winning, if these people were actually getting their way, they wouldn't be behaving like this. It's what they've chosen to do because at this point they're in their death throes. It's the only method they have left because everything else they've done has not worked. Despite all the fist shaking, the foot stomping, the holding of the breath until they turn blue in the face, despite the death threats, despite the bullying, despite the boycotts, despite claiming that every single Star Wars project has been a complete failure, despite claiming that Star Wars is dead, despite claiming that, oh, it's just one big dumpster fire and we're expecting it to burn itself out any day now, or claiming that Star Wars is a sinking ship and eventually it's going to hit rock bottom any day now, or claiming that, oh, Star Wars has become a total train wreck and it's just going to grind to a halt any day now. Meanwhile, Star Wars just coasts on by. Most of their projects getting multiple seasons, once thought to be dead and buried projects that weren't going to get a second chance, getting a second chance in life. Despite people who will claim that everything Disney's done with Star Wars has been a complete and total failure, and The Acolyte is the latest failure in a long line of failures. Good. What are you upset about then? If things are working out and panning out as you say, the only thing you have to do is just kick back, put up your feet, and wait for this long line of failures to add up and Disney going, oh shit, we're actually not making money on this product and that's all we actually care about. That's just sort of slowly starts separating us from doing any more projects with Star Wars for the time being and maybe downplay any other future projects. Kind of just like whittle it down to the absolute bare minimum for the time being until we can maybe find a way to build interest back up. I don't know, it's just this logical thing that we would do. Or it gets sold off. And then maybe the person who buys it will just be like, yeah, all this stuff that Disney did, non-canon, just erase, delete. It's only a matter of time, right? And I mean, you guys already do this mental gymnastics with your own self-gaslighting to pretend that these stories and shows that Disney's made are non-canon anyways because you have your own headcanon, and in your headcanon, these stories never even happened to begin with. So again, what's the problem? If you can mentally do that to yourself. Just do that to yourself and ignore what comes out. It's crazy how that works. It's so wild. Because despite those who will tell you, no one's watching this show, the facts prove shows like The Acolyte are in the top 10 most watched shows out there currently. Viewership speaks for itself, but then they say, oh, yeah, but the viewer ratings tanked. But the second you remind them, oh, well, if you're actually thinking viewer score is a credible metric for quality, are you saying The Rise of Skywalker is a better movie than Revenge of the Sith? Does that also mean that you're admitting that most of the shows and movies Disney has made since acquiring it are actually good because they have pretty good scores? A lot better than The Acolyte. Oh, but then all of a sudden things change really quickly. Those aren't indications of quality. Then why is it an indication of quality when it tanks? Because only then do you get to pretend it means you're right? How convenient. So for any of those of you out there weathering the storm, just take some solace and comfort in knowing that these people are only behaving this way because they've lost. They have nothing to contribute. They have nothing to actually force things to go their way. If they did, we would have seen something, anything, by now. But Disney has owned Star Wars for over a decade. Their temper tantrums didn't work, their boycotts didn't work, and now review bombing is all they have left in their arsenal. Look, we are halfway through this season of The Acolyte, and if you're not on board by now, let me be one of the first to tell you there's absolutely no shame in choosing to just stop watching the show. Because after I upload this video, if by the next episode comes out, people come to my channel to tell me, oh, this next episode is worse than even the last, the only thing I have for you at this point is to tell you, then you shouldn't have watched the episode. You shouldn't have kept watching the show. Do you know how many episodes of The Acolyte would have pissed you off if you chose to not watch the show? It's crazy how that works. So wild. But if you're one of those people that downvoted the trailer to the show before it came out, but you're watching it all the way through thinking that, oh, I'm going to be objective and give it its fair shot. Oh, sweetie, please just stop pretending. No one on planet Earth is buying it. Just stop lying to yourself, because that is the only person who is believing you at this point. But if you are one of the people that is watching the show genuinely in good faith, but so far have not been impressed thus far with the show, I have two options for you. Either you just stop watching the show. You just stop watching the show and you move on. You just take it, you just go, this is a no for me, dog, and you move on, and that is 100% fine. Maybe you wait a little while, wait for the hysteria to die down, and then when you're ready, maybe give it another look. See how things might have changed for you by then. Just a suggestion. Option 2, you let the story conclude, and you do this bizarre thing where you wait and see if by the end of the story, and I mean the end of the entire story, not the end of each episode, to see if things are still confusing. You wait for the entire story to conclude and then make a judgment on if things are pieced together properly. Because stories have this weird thing where they build this intrigue by leaving some questions up in the air throughout the story, and then by the end of it, it all comes together to make everything that was confusing before make sense by the end. That's typically called a plot. I know. It's wild how these things work. It's so crazy. But then again, that's not what it's about, is it? Because after all, it wasn't too long ago, this exact same crowd of people was once again bemoaning the death of Star Wars. Yet, they're still here. You seem surprisingly invested in how the show turns out. It couldn't possibly be that despite all the bemoaning of the death of Star Wars, you have this undeserved sense of superiority, right? Where you get to pretend that you know more than the average fan. You get to pretend you know more than the fans that like this new content. But the second someone gets a little bit fed up with your non-stop whining and says, hey, how about you back up what you say with some sources? Like, what is actually getting contradicted that pisses you off? And then you go, how dare you? And proceed to say everything under the sun and name call all the cute little insults you've ever heard on the internet, rather than just dropping the canon source. Tad bit suspicious. And again, keep in mind, if you don't like this new era of content, if you genuinely feel like the stories are bad, I'm not here to tell you you're wrong. I'm not here to laugh at you. I'm not here to say that you aren't a fan because you disagree with me. It's unfortunate that you don't like what's being provided. I'm sorry. And if you're coping with that responsibly, like an adult, I commend you for that. That's the only thing you can really do, though. Now, in regards to the idea that these people aren't fans. The people who behave like this aren't fans. Let's make something clear. Obviously, I've made thumbnails that when I address the people in question who behave this way as fans, quote unquote. So, certain people do pick up on that and they do comment about it, criticizing me for trying to revoke their fan card. Now, keep in mind, I have never once in my life said, if you disagree with me, or if you don't like what I like, or if you hate anything that Disney has made, you're not a real fan, despite that being the complete total opposite case on the other end of the table. But let's just ignore that for a minute. I'm not the kind of person to revoke someone's fandom card for disagreeing with me or having a different point of view, because I'm not that mind-numbingly, pathetically shallow-minded. However, how you conduct yourself, how you respect the teachings of Star Wars, and who you associate yourself with are a reflection of you as a fan of Star Wars. If you're the kind of person that would send death threats to someone for any reason, if you're the kind of person that would wish death on someone because they edited a Wikipedia page, if you're the kind of person that would send racial attacks, racially charged attacks against another actor just for the sin of being involved in a Star Wars project, if you're the kind of person to bully and harass other fans or the creators of this content because you don't like it, if you're the kind of person that associates yourself with people who are either known liars or associate themselves with known liars while promoting themselves in every single way that virtually wipes their ass with the values of Star Wars, whose entire job is well known to simply being to stir the pot and fuel this phony outrage and hysteria rather than to get people to get a grip on reality and use the most bare minimum level of critical thinking when it comes to these stories that we're getting. If you're the kind of person that is so shallow that you'll desperately claw and grasp for any quote from someone that you think is an authority on Star Wars, just to say fuck you when they don't do what you want, when they don't say what you want, and bemoan the death of the franchise, yet you will always somehow still be here to whine about the next thing that comes out. As a fan, you should be asking yourself, is my behavior a reflection of what Star Wars preaches and promotes? Am I actually the good guy when I wish death on an editor and his pets? When I bully, harass, and threaten people? Is that respecting Star Wars? Is that respecting the lessons of Star Wars? Is that what the heroes would nod and give me the thumbs up over? Or would they shake their head and kind of avert their eyes from just how mind-numbingly pathetic you are? I'm not going to say you're not a Star Wars fan. You're just not a very good one.